Hello, everybody. So this is the Web ID Engineering Sync, and today we have a topic. We are gonna discuss um, how we can bootstrap the Web ID workbench. Now that we are working on um, like a new way of deploying the Web ID on multiple domains, and we have an MR that is trying to sandbox the iframe where we load the Web ID inside the GitLab application. And the initial implementation that we were using before this project of using a different domain for the Web ID was basically writing the document that is loaded into the iframe, writing it from outside of the iframe, and loading the initial workbench HTML. But that was like dynamically generated using JavaScript. Um, in the MAR that I published to sandbox the iframe, this approach is replaced. We are still like injecting the JavaScript dynamically, but then like the JavaScript is sent through the post message API. And in post code review, you've shared some concerns about this approach, right, Paul? Um, so yeah, we're gonna try to find a better way
Yeah.
of
Yeah, and,
doing
and
this.
if it doesn't work out, it's like I just wanted to touch base and see if we can brainstorm something and understand a little bit more of the second approach that you took. Um, but maybe we could spend some time talking. What were you saying earlier? You were saying HTML isn't a real programming language. What was that, Enrique? I'm joking.
No, it's definitely it's been since, well, who knows? Like I know like sometimes we use it like, oh no, like you only know HTML, you don't know how to code. No, like we are not that mean here at GitLab.
Oh man. And it's funny too. CSS gets a lot of flack for that. But when you see Julia do her like CSS animation stuff, have you seen those?
Oh yes, I've seen her talks too.
Yeah.
It's impressive.
Uh, it is impressive. It's way more impressive than what us JavaScripters can visually do. Um, all right. Yeah, let's check it out. Do you want to share your screen or I can share my screen or
Um, I
I think
can I
opening
can
up the
share my
code
screen.
too
I
might be helpful.
Yeah, I have a third proposal that I
Okay.
can like show immediately, but I would like at least to have like to share some context in the call
Yeah.
to to explain better what the problem is. I think that you're right. Like, I'm glad that we have like six eyeballs looking at this because it's very challenging to find like a secure way of implementing it. Um, so what I'm proposing in my MR, let's go to this page here, is that the initial HTML, and let's see if the MR page helps me by
This is
displaying the
so
file.
irritating. I know.
It's
It's
very
so
frustrating.
irritating.
No worry. Let's see. Okay, it's just that it is
It's just
collapsed,
renaming the empty HTML file.
but you don't want to show the content. Uh, okay, let me see. So it should be here. Okay, so it is here. So the idea is that this HTML is receiving a message. First, like it can be from any domain, can be like can have like any parent, and then the message contains the HTML that loads VS Code, like that loads the web ID, and we are inserting that directly into the code, and that's very dangerous because um, it basically allows arbitrary execution. But what I was counting with is that since this is going to be in a different domain, there is a static a single page application that's what we are aiming for with the web ID. It would be safe because in the domain we don't have the GitLab cookies we don't have like any user information, and the user couldn't like the an attacker couldn't like use this to exploit and take advantage of any data. Um, However, I think that since we are allowing to embed this file anywhere in any GitLab instance, then like there are security concerns that like we probably it's better if we can find a more secure way of doing it.
Yeah,
Um,
my concern, even from this cross origin perspective, is like, okay, we're not storing directly anything yet, but who knows? A couple of years from now, we might find a need to store something. And but then I think you may also have access to the VS Code index DB stuff, and so who knows what all that's going to store as we upgrade VS Code and things like that. So, um, as I see, understanding how, you know, having deep dived into the VS Code project and how they handle these like sandbox iframes needing to run things, um, only the extension host will receive like code that it runs in a remote context, but that's doing its own security thing with the random origins. Um, Other than that, you have these HTML files that like they have a bit more hard coded like what they're expected to do, and so I think that was the thing I was wanting to talk out was, so the only thing we're really passing down here is effectively this source and nonce, right? Of just like, hey, placeholder, uh, or hey, HTML file, sandbox iframe. I want you to load the script at this source, right? That's kind of the only thing we're really doing here. And so I was wondering, why would we be able to will we be able to at this origin like relatively determine what the script should be that it should load, you know?
yes, so we are not only loading the script, we are also loading the CSS styles and also like the
Mm.
font definitions to load GitLab, the GitLab fonts in the web IDE. So it's a little bit more complex than that. But in essentially what you're saying is true. Like if we just need like if what we need to load is basically like a few resource files that represent the VS Code CSS files and the VS Code Bootstrap JavaScript that we are using like to initialize it. Maybe you can have like hard-coded HTML and just like pass the routes to those files, right? And then we would avoid arbitrary execution. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I think so. So my question is, could this frame look at its own window location to get the origin? Could maybe in our window messenger, let's pass the relative URL path, and then from my frame, I'll use my origin, the relative URL path I've been given, and let's just hard code all the resources we got to load in.
Well, I'm so glad that you mentioned that
Okay, nice. That's great. I'm glad that
because
works.
this is exactly what I implemented
Oh, nice.
few
Brilliant.
hours
Okay.
ago. No, but like that's exactly the conclusion that I arrived to this
Okay,
morning.
cool.
Basically like
And so
even
we don't
like
even need to post a message, it looks like, is what you're saying.
yes, we don't even have to post. Well, we have to post a message, but for passing the config serialized.
Right, got it, got it.
But that
Okay.
is gonna be JSON. It's not executable. But we don't even need to get the origin of the document to load the JavaScript and CSS assets because they are hosted in the same server and in the same origin. We can use just relative paths here,
Mm, okay,
and that's what I tried here, and it works.
cool.
Um, on top of
Yeah,
that,
that's great.
um, for additional security, we can set a content security policy directive that only allows to execute JavaScript that is hosted in the same origin. And in that way, and it disallows inline
Yeah,
scripts. So that will like add an additional layer of security.
cool. I think that's great. Um,
The only well, there is I only have like two observations with this. We will have like to do a little bit of well, we are gonna have to make a few changes here because we are still using the base URL configuration that we are passing from the parent frame, and we will have to replace this with relative URLs as well, which I think is not a problem, right?
Let me think. I think that makes sense. Um, okay. Well, okay, let me go back then. Okay. If you go back to if you go back to workbench cross origin, so we are waiting. We will need this post message. Let me let my dog out really quickly. I'm sorry. Give me a quick
No, don't
second.
worry. Take your time. Hello, chat. How's it going? Oh, you're muted.
It's good. Looking forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks.
Yes, yes. It's gonna be fun. I didn't know that it was like so that we were going to have an event in Amsterdam. I'm super excited
Yeah, they're
about that.
inviting everybody, or all of engineering at least, Thursday night. So that should be cool.
Yeah.
Um,
So
yeah.
back to Workbench cross origin.
Uh, what I was gonna say is going back to the main TS. At what point? Because you did mention we will have to do this post message where we send the config to the sandbox. So why would we not have the config at this point? Could we actually just, I mean,
No, like we have the config here, and it's like I can run this code, and it will run fine. What I don't want is to allow someone embedding this iframe to be able to load arbitrary JavaScript files by
uh,
setting a base URL.
oh, but the CSP is pretty good though, right?
That's true. The CSP could fix that. It could just like prevent that situation from happening. But like it's an extra security measure that
Yeah,
uh, that
I'm
we
I'm
can
good.
take.
That's a good point that this config is coming from user land. That's a good point. Um, yeah, I think it's no problem to make it relative. If you scroll up to what does insert script do? I'm just concerned about like there's two things that are going on in my head. There's one is this is doing AMD stuff, which I know that's all getting changed, coming down the pipeline too. But then two, uh the second thing is that I want to make sure we don't couple, all of these script references too much to the source when it's coupled to the expectation of the compiled directory structure. I don't want to like have that implicit coupling too much because it's a little funky to test. But uh yeah, I think either way would be fine. Yeah, we can make it relative. That shouldn't be a problem.
I see what you say. It's looking forward, looking like at the big picture, and like solving this problem in general. What I feel is that we actually need to generate this file dynamically on the server and in the backend at some point. Because if we were doing that, we could completely iron out this implementation from a security point of view. We could, for example, generate the config, like the all the config, the
Yeah,
configuration could be injected in the server.
that'd be
We could
cool.
have a content security policy that is restricting the access and the resources to the GitLab instance domain and the domain hosting the web ID. Um, but I see it like as a maybe like as a fair iteration that we are trying to deliver for GitLab.com. We can
Mm,
follow this approach, but like I think like this situation raises a visibility that at some point we need tighter coupling between the origin of the web IDE and the origin of the GitLab instance.
mm,
Um, there should be a way in which this origin knows about the GitLab instance origin, so it
mm.
can like implement those security restrictions.
Yeah, that would be interesting. That would be really cool if our little web ID server like just can accept like an environment variable of like, hey, here's the GitLab origin and have that all
Hmm.
automatically hooked up. But I don't see any issue with this. Like I think this seems pretty good from the security issues that we experienced in the web ID. Like I think this covers that ground. My only other question then is like, do we need would this also support the existing workbench setup too? Like, could we just keep it all, just have one HTML file doing this?
Yes, I think that we can use a single implementation instead of
Oh, that's
branching
great.
by feature flag. But I
Yeah,
have
that's great.
another observation. I don't want to omit this that there is still like a little bit of dynamic resource execution that is happening with the GitLab fonts. Um,
Oh no, that's right. Oh, that's right.
so I implemented at least like I removed all the part of the dynamic code execution and I limited um, the what the user is injecting to the font path. So when you are referring like the font URL is still like provided by the web IDE config.
Hmm.
Everything else is not. But this is still um, like
Yeah,
font resources are we still need to get from outside,
I think that's fine.
right?
Yeah, I don't know. I'd be surprised if we paid a bounty because somebody said, "Hey, I was able to get load malicious fonts."
Yeah, like I implemented Zelda in
That
a
just
font
looked
file.
offensive. You're like, I don't know. Yeah,
No,
so I think that's fine.
cool.
Um,
Why is that different than any other of these vectors where people use some random thing that they know nothing about and it does bad things? Like that's the same thing I bring up on every issue, every security issue. Why is this fundamentally different? That it's a font?
yeah, because I think the web restricts like you're not it's like loading CSS. It's not behavior or doing anything. It's not able to load scripts or
Okay,
actual.
so like no
Yeah.
information leak.
There's not any kind of attack vector there. I
Oh.
don't but I don't know. I said that so matter of factly, but I got to be honest, is I've been so surprised with security issues over the years that maybe it's worth just pinging Greg on it.
Yeah,
The true Greg. Don't ping false Greg. Uh, and
that's always confusing, like
yeah. Cool. No, I'm really glad that works out. I'm really, really glad. I wasn't sure, and I was had a feeling like I was hoping it would. So I'm glad that you'd already thought of it. And yeah, I think we're on the same page about it. But it's going to be really nice. Cool. And then we'll get rid of all the, so correct me if I'm wrong, but that means in the Web ID project, that whole like get iframe HTML, that module's going away, right?
Yep. Yeah. We are just
Cool.
like replacing it with hard-coded HTML and JavaScript and
Cool.
like limiting code generation. Well,
Nice.
like yeah, it's gonna be like almost zero code generation.
Nice. Um, Kind of related. Can I show you something that was recently added to the Web ID project?
Of course. Let me just stop sharing my screen.
Oh, okay. I was going to show on your screen, but I'll try to open up on mine. Um, so like for some of those, like, um, so we have hard coded some relative paths. Like my only, and this is some niche concern, but like, okay, that means when we actually deploy these things out in our package, we expect a certain layout of our directory, like things have to be in certain positions of the package when everything's actually done. So I don't know if you've gotten to take a look at, we actually have this package tests now. So we've moved those tests that we had in the main project for those like security patching stuff, and they're now live here, which actually test the tarball package itself. Have you gotten to see these, Enrique?
No, I only saw the implementation of the post install script, but
Okay.
I haven't seen the test.
So I was showing this because you might find it useful if you're moving cross origin stuff around and it's important to assert that like the layout of the directory is a certain way. Because so to keep things simple, this isn't using jest and it's just using the node assertion stuff. But um this is basically a test file that runs on all right, let me back up for a second. So the only thing we really need to do is just run uh test package test run. Oh, but I actually got to provide a path to the package I'm testing. Um
Nice.
and yeah, it just creates a temporary directory, installs that tarball, and then runs this stuff. And so this is how we can check, okay, looking at all the HTML files, do we have any extraneous HTML files that we're including in here that are going to be problematic? Or do we have any, did we actually rename the node modules correctly? Or other things like that. So if we're like, oh, I'm moving the way we need to actually build the package, these scripts need to be relative to this HTML or whatever, this could be an interesting place to add that kind of assertion that you just can't at the unit level. So yeah,
Mm.
I was just showing that. I thought it was, I
That's
don't know
very
if it's
useful.
relevant,
Yeah,
but yeah.
probably like it's always good to receive that kind of explicit feedback when something changes in the in the package. That's something that is like not that is not usual. It's not common because those are silent errors. You only know
Yeah.
that something failed when when you're running the actual application. So
Oh yeah, or when we're trying to update the web ID package,
yeah,
it's like requires all these little things. Yeah. Uh cool. No, that sounds great. Thanks for syncing up on it. Um yeah, I don't think
no,
I
thank
had
you.
anything
It's
else.
very good that again, like I really appreciate that you're looking into this because there are like so many side effects and security is very challenging in general. It's like we have to take into account so many scenarios. So it's good that we are going a little bit slower
Yeah.
with this project.
Yeah, I've definitely learned through the recent uh through the recent issues from last year the importance of never ever be very careful what you receive in a post message from an iframe you host. Don't host iframe, don't host HTML you're not familiar with. Be careful about what gets received. And um, yeah, so I appreciate iterating on the issue. Yeah, thanks for bringing it up. I think it's it. Yeah, we can skedaddle.
Sounds good. Well, thank you
All
everybody
right.
for joining.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be recording the call later. Um, yeah, have a good rest of your day. See you around.
All right. See
Bye
you.
bye.
Okay.